So I'm joined by Pelego Powell, and he's going to talk to us and give us a few tips. So before we start, Pelego, would you like to tell everyone what you do and where you work?
Oh, yes. So I'm Pelego Powell. I've got two jobs. The first job is I'm an assistant head teacher. I work in an in-institute school in Birmingham.
Right.
And it's challenging, as you know, especially during these times. And my second job is I'm a creative director for Aston Performing Arts Academy.
Brilliant.
Again, working with young people, using arts as an outlet to channel whatever emotions or feelings they may have.
Great.
So, yeah.
How long have you been teaching for?
Oh, so about the same. So I've been teaching for about 12 years. And I've been at Aston Performing Arts Academy about 12 years. So they kind of go hand in hand, really.
Okay, and was it a natural progression for you? Was it a natural thing, something that you fell into quite naturally? Is it something that you always knew you wanted to do and it just kind of flowed, it was quite fluid, or was it sit down, make a plan?
Yeah, no, it wasn't sit down and make a plan. It was very reactionary. I always knew I wanted to work with young people in some sort of capacity. That's all I've known, is I've wanted to make a difference with young people from when I was back in primary school myself. And when I went to uni, I studied criminology and sociology, and I really wanted to work with young offenders.
Okay.
That was my goal.
Why young offenders in particular?
Because I felt like young black people in particular were misunderstood. And when you look at the criminal rates, and especially around these areas, it's young black boys in particular who are mostly misunderstood and who take up most of the makeup in the criminal justice. So I kind of wanted to do that. And then when I was at uni, you do all these kind of work experiences and things, and to see whether you like it or not. And we love when I went into a young offenders institution, and I had my first kind of confrontation. And one young black boy must have been about 16, 17. I mean, he looked me dead on and told me to suck my mum. And
Joking?
It was an experience, and I wouldn't say I was scared. I just went home really dejected and really disappointed.
Yeah.
That out of nowhere, this young man had so much aggression, so much anger, so much emotion, negative emotion, and I kind of thought I need to rethink what I want to do, because at 16, 17, it's too late.
Yeah.
They've created their characters, they've gone through that process, and the society has already turned their back on them. They've written them off. And it's just then a babysitting service.
Okay.
And I kind of really looked at what I wanted to do, and I thought, you know what, I need to get in. I need to be a part of the process of making this character. And I didn't think I could do that in secondary school. So I looked at primary teaching, and that's why I became a primary school teacher, because it's at that age where you can instill certain characteristics that are essential to making up that person. And hence why I went into primary school teaching.
Amazing. Sounds pretty natural to me, but it sounds like a good alternative from wanting to work with young offenders to starting at an age where you can sort of tap in before they develop those poor habits, or maybe are influenced by the wrong people or in the wrong environments more so. So, okay, so we've got quite a few questions here for you. I guess the first one would be, do you think there could ever be a time where we have a fully resourced black school anywhere in the UK, with highly qualified black teachers, students getting extremely good grades, 100% A to C GCSEs, or it's not even A to C anymore, is it? It's like 1, 2, 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think that time could come in the next generation?
Yes, I do. I do believe that it can happen, and I hope that it will happen. My reservations are the hoops that one needs to jump through in order to get that to happen.
Tell us about some of the hoops.
So, goodness me, I wanted to open my school, and there is so much you have to do in order to. You have to understand a target audience. You have to understand the community. You have to get a team involved, which consists of senior leaders in the school, qualified teachers, and accountants. And it takes minimum of 2 years for you to have a school. And when I think about the black makeup within education, it's hard to see, because you need that one person or that team of people within education who's going to drive that. And statistically, I mean, you've got, I think it's around 2% of male black teachers. And I mean, you whittle that down even more when you're looking at teachers from the Caribbean. It's less than 1%.
Wow.
And it's difficult. It's going to take that team, and it's going to take backing as well from the government. And the government need to understand that there is a need for black educational institutions, and in some cases be a driving force for it.
So what if they don't? Because the problem, why our service exists, is because we recognise that for however long we've never really got the support that we need from the government, and this service is really about us as a community coming together and saying, look, we have some power over some things, we have resources, we have skills amongst each other, but we're just so fragmented. It's not utilised in a way that benefits us. It only benefits the individual most of the time. So us kind of looking externally is never really, I'm not saying we shouldn't, and we shouldn't take advantage of what's there, but what if that time doesn't come when the government, we've seen report after report, review after review, we know that they're going to try and do this, they're going to try and do that. What do we do as a community? Because obviously that's one of our biggest barriers in terms of us having a really low socioeconomic status, is that our kids are not educated well enough, the schools are not well resourced, the teachers are not good quality teachers. So it has to start from there, doesn't it? A good education, then our kids can leave with the grades that they need to get into university and to get a good job. So if the government doesn't support, what should we do? What would be your kind of like thoughts around how we can have some movement in progressing our children?
Well, I think it's difficult because there's so many intervening factors. It's bigger than just the government saying here's some grants and go forth and go and sort the school. Go and sort out your schools. I guess the first bit is this what we're doing now: conversations and discussions and awareness, and people fully understanding what's involved in being able to open a school. Because it's such a cycle, I think you hit the nail on the head with, we have to educate our young people so that they can dream, that they can think the impossible is the possible, and that they can be equipped with the knowledge and the skills to be able to open, because schools essentially is a business, to be able to open a business. And that happens within school. I don't underestimate the power that educators have on young people. And it has to happen in school, because young, and I'm going to talk about young black boys, have parents within our community, and I'm not saying all, but generally have low aspirations, low expectations, and if black boys are going to school who are deprived, they have low expectations, and teachers also have low expectations and low aspirations, then they ain't going to dream big, they ain't going to think big, and it becomes that cycle that's perpetuated over and over again.
Yeah, do you think that's one of the main reasons for black boys underachieving still? Because I looked at the 2018 GCSE results, and black boys, bar Romani, Gypsies, and another ethnic group, I think it was Bangladeshi ethnic group, black boys had the lowest GCSE grades in 2018. So do you think that has a lot to do with it, that we're not expecting them to do well, schools not expecting them to do well, they're not being engaged properly? Because we were having a conversation prior to this about, I've got a son, you've got a son, and they seem to have a lack of motivation, even though we're parents that do, you know, motivate them and try to drive them and engage them. What do you think? I've had this conversation so many times with so many different people who said, like, look, I can't get my son to focus, I can't get him engaged. What do you think the issue is, particularly with young black boys?
There's a host of issues, and you would never be able to pin it down to one main thing. For instance, the curriculum. It's designed and it's set up against the young black boy. I mean,
explain what you mean by that.
It's say, for instance, if you look at the history curriculum, it's all British history, which I have nothing against. But a part of the British history, there's a significant amount of black people who are involved in the development of this country, and that's never spoken about. So a young black boy going into school, and they've got English literature, they've got British history, and it's everything is white. They have nothing to identify with. So already they lose a percentile of engagement.
So what can you say to young black, I don't know, say there's a young black boy or girl who's just left university, doesn't know what to do. What would you say to encourage them to get into teaching? Or to encourage anyone to get into teaching, really?
The first thing I will say is, you know yourself if you've got a passion or an interest. If you've got no interest in giving back or with young people or what have you, then don't bother. Because the last thing the profession needs are teachers who are not interested and invested and want the best. Because as a parent, you would want whoever's in front of your kids for 50% of the time to be 100% in. So the first thing I say is, have you got an interest? The second thing I will say is, go and volunteer in a local school, different schools. So every school is different. So as I said, I would only ever work in an inner city school because I feel like that's my calling. But for some might want to work in a village school, some might want to work in a small school with only one class per year group, some might want to work in a bigger school where there's 3 classes per year group, it just depends. But volunteer, and if it means one day a week you just go to different schools and to get a feel, do that. People also underestimate the financial rewards of teaching, and it's not the best paid profession for what you do. So you have to understand that before you go into it. If you feel like you're going to go into
for
it,
money,
forget it. It's not going to happen. So you have to understand the financial elements of working in teaching and understand the different careers that are involved in teaching. Because you start off with a teacher, you might end up as a head teacher. So there's lots of different.
Or even go into lecturing,
or even mentoring in schools. Or
absolutely.
There are a lot of different ways professions that you can work in schools, but you only find that out if you go into a school and volunteer and offer your time.
So what do you think is the main, like, what's the I know you talked about like why you wanted to go into teaching, but from being a teacher for 12 years now, what's been the main benefit? What's been the thing that makes you get up in the morning and makes you continue to do it? We just had COVID, you've been on the front line, you've had to go in, during the pandemic? What is the thing that keeps you going, that keeps you...
For me, it would always be the influence. The reward of teaching, for me, it still is relevant today as it was 12 years ago.
Right.
There's this one child within school who struggles with his behaviour, young black kid, and there's nothing more rewarding if he does something positive. The first person he wants to come and show is me, and I'm not even in class.
Yeah.
He would come and look for me every morning, phones me, and whatever.
Yeah.
And for me, it's that feeling of he hasn't got a father at home, but I'm making that difference for him.
Yeah.
And it's not just one child; it's several. I had the other day, I had on in my Facebook a young boy who said he's going off to uni now and he's going to study primary teaching, and the reason why is because of me.
Oh, wow.
That is, it's lovely to hear, because it means that little old me is making a difference, and doing what I set out to do.
Yeah.
So for me, that is the biggest reward of doing what I want to do, and it's influence and change and being that change.
And it's something that's going to continue, because when that person becomes a teacher, when that boy becomes a teacher, he's going to help somebody else, and then could influence someone else, and then ultimately it's better for our community, and helps us to progress and move out of where we are now, which is really important. So
you were saying that, you were just before we was on camera, you were saying, and you was talking about, we always talk, but what are we doing? And what you're doing now is brilliant, and we're getting it out to the masses. But for some people, it might be that you're making change within your little circle, within your little bubble, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you doing what you're doing, and everyone has their little pockets and they're doing what they're doing, then it ripples, and it makes that difference. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that what I'm doing is enough, because it's not, because when you look statistically, as I said to you before, there's only 2% of black male teachers. That is not enough. It's not a good representation. And if children don't see, that's 98% of our children who are not seeing black teachers.
Representations of themselves.
So they're not going to believe, they're not going to think, oh, I could do that. At least the person who emailed me on Facebook and said I'm enrolling to be a primary school teacher, he saw me and thought, I could do what he's doing. I could do that. And we need more of that. And things like this is great, because we need to get the word out there so young black boys know that they can do it. It is achievable. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, you do have to go to uni. Yes, you do have to study. But it's achievable. And if I can do it, anyone can do it. I wouldn't say I was the brightest kid in the class. And I always go back to, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
So we're in the middle. We're still kind of, we've just come out of lockdown. We're still dealing with COVID. There are a lot of parents pulling their hair out. I was one of them. During that first lockdown, it was definitely a challenge. And I don't know what advice to give to parents, but what are some of the tips? I mean, I can't homeschool. I've realised that. I used to have this utopic vision in my head of, I'll homeschool my kids, and we'll have class every day, we'll get up at 7 and have our breakfast, and I'll teach my kids. And obviously most of us are still working, so we're working and then trying to teach our kids at the same time. Kids are not engaged, they're getting bored, they don't want to do it, there's no rewards. It is really, really, really difficult, and it's affecting so many people's mental health, both children and parents. It's not easy. This has not been an easy time. So what advice, what tips can you give to us, to parents who are struggling, and kids?
I sympathise with every family who have had to homeschool without that kind of experience. My brother alone, he really struggled homeschooling, and up to this day we always argue about the homeschooling, etc., etc. But he really struggled during lockdown. for various reasons, children didn't respond very well. He wasn't equipped to be able to homeschool. Resources, didn't have the correct resources, didn't know where to start, where to pitch the learning, didn't understand the national curriculum. Like, there is a host of reasons why one will struggle when it comes to homeschooling. And what I would say is, do what you can. When I was homeschooling, it was actually really refreshing because I knew where to start, I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And the first thing I will say is, don't try and be everybody else. Don't try and do, we're going to get up at 9:30, we're going to do the piece of reading, then we're going to have your break, then we're going to have a piece. Don't. Okay. When I was homeschooling, I did 1 hour a day, and that was it.
Really?
And that's all I did.
But what if my worry was my son's going to fall behind, especially he was in year 6 at the time, going into year 7. For those core years, SATs, GCSEs, you will worry about if they don't get enough, because this might be a new normal. We might have a lockdown every so often for the next year or two. So it might happen again and again and again. So parents might be worrying, if I do 1 hour a day, because I did 3 hours, I didn't, I thought
that's a lot.
I thought, because I wanted to do the full day, 9 till 3, but I couldn't. I just couldn't cope, so I just done 3 hours. But my worry was, he will fall behind.
And that's the kind of pressure that parents have. But when you think about the quality of provision that they're getting in school, think about there's 30 kids in a class and there's one teacher. And when you divide it and break it down, the direct input that person is going to get is going to be less than an hour throughout the whole day.
Yeah.
There's 4 hours of teaching. There's 30 kids in the class. Your child will be lucky to get direct teaching, be lucky to get 5 minutes for that day. And when you think about homeschooling, your child has got 1 full hour of your undivided attention. That is more than enough.
So what should parents concentrate on? Should they do a different subject every day? Should they make sure they do maths every day? That's what I did. Because obviously maths and English are the most important. So should they? Where should they start?
The first place to start is, it's easy for me to say because I'm a teacher, so I know the curriculum and I know what to target. However, the curriculum is made available to every single person. You just go onto the internet and type in national curriculum, year 3 or whatever year they're in. And you just come up and you will see all the objectives and what to cover.
But how do you... Because I've seen it, and the curriculum will come up, for example, and then it will say, you can use CBBC, bite size or whatever. And it's pretty much... it doesn't teach the parents how to... Do you know what I mean? How to teach the child. It's almost like that child... that you should expect that your child knows what they're doing when they're doing this piece of work. And if that child says, I don't understand, or I don't know how to do this, the parent's washed, because we're sitting there like, well, we don't know how to do it either. And I've had those moments with my son where we've done, the schools were just sending him bite size. Yeah. They weren't sending them us a lesson plan, or it was just bite size. And for a lot of the sheets, it was expected that your child should already know what this algebra equation means. And if they don't, that's where I was always washed, and I'd always end up having to buy those workbooks from Amazon or whatever, and just doing what I know of him, and that might not be in.
And that's all you can do. That's the hardest part. Now, what parents can do is try and revise themselves and try and the night before and try and think, right, let me try and equip myself with the skills in order to support my child. Mm-hmm. If you can't do it, then only do what you can do. If the man's doing addition every single day, fine.
So, because your brother not having patience, etc., I can relate to that. Because it comes from a place of fear, I think. It comes from a place of worrying that if they don't get this, they're washed, they're black, they're not going to get the, support that they need to get them back up to a standard. How do I cope? I haven't got the time. If they don't get this now, I physically haven't got the time to get them back to a place. So if you've got a child that is, you know, they're pretty much up to standards, they're okay, they don't need that so much support, they'll go back to school and really just bounce back in. I guess you could relax a little bit and be okay with them missing out. But if you've got a child that you know struggles, and if they, you know, this is really integral to them, making it out with minimum grades, what do you prioritise? Like,
that fear is derived from social fear of, oh my goodness me, my child's going to be behind when they go back to school, blah, 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 blah. And it's completely a different world when they go back to school because everybody is in the same boat. And when they do go back to school, if it's a good school, they operate on recovery curriculum. So the things that they've essentially missed out on are the things that they will do when they go back to school. So for instance, I was like, in that first lockdown, I was like, oh my goodness me, like I've got to do this A, B and C because I don't want my child to go back to school, you know, behind. And lo and behold, my child's gone back to school and they're doing everything that I did in the first lockdown.
Yeah.
And my child is now bored sitting in class, and every time I email to say, well, why are you doing this? This is far too easy for him, blah, 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 blah. They respond back to, well, it's the recovery curriculum and we need to. So it's, when they do go back to school.
Was that just that school, or is that across the board? Are all schools
if it's a good school, we do a recovery curriculum.
Oh, so it's not like a plan that all schools need to do.
And in terms of statutory data, so you're looking at things that what Ofsted look at and things that are published. They are still talking about it. The government are still talking about it now. But Key Stage 1 SATs are now abandoned. So.
Oh, great!
Yeah, so we don't need to be thinking, oh my God, they're behind, etc.
Yeah, great.
Because it's not going to affect them as such. Key Stage 2 English SATs are abandoned because that's a major thing. Maths and reading is still there, but the national pass rate is still being discussed. So usually it's around 70%. I can't see it being around 70%. I think it needs to reflect the cohort in the same way they did GCSEs, really. It needs to reflect what's happening in society at the moment. So I say institutions, they understand the limitations, and and I say this to parents, if they can't do it, don't. Because the worst thing that can happen is A, you can't do it, and B, you can't do it, but you're stressed because of it. So it's like there's two things that's going on.
Yeah.
Just be stressed with it and done with it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, just can't do it and be done with it, rather than can't do it and be stressed with it, and then it feeds up on the child. It's all on. Concentrate on what you can do. Yeah. That's what you can do.
Okay, well, amazing. Thank you ever so much for your information, your tips, your advice. It's been thorough and informative. We appreciate that.
Thank you for having me. I'd love to come on again.
Yeah, let's do an update. If this happens again and we're in lockdown again, I'm sure we're going to need, like, even, I don't know, some kind of...
I had so many people calling me. Maybe this is a service that we can hopefully link up and touch base with and create, because I had so many people calling me and saying, I need to do this and I don't know what to do, and I don't know what to do, and etc. etc. And I think for me, when it comes to home learning now, schools are so equipped. Right. They've learned from the first one. So, online learning is a massive thing. Teams, you've got the Google Classroom, you've got Zooms happening, and teachers are far more equipped. We had a whole school lockdown when we all went back, because COVID was rife in our school.
Oh God!
Yeah, we had so many positive cases, so many teachers out, so many kids out. We had to shut the school down for a week.
Wow.
And during that time, my job was to make sure that children were active and engaging in the Google Classroom, the online learning.
Right.
And when I looked at the percentages, we had 60% of children who were actively engaging in home learning.
Right.
Which, when the first lockdown, we had like 15%.
You're joking?
Yeah, it was. But we do live in a really, really deprived. We do work in a deprived area.
Right. Okay.
So internet and technological devices and
digital
siblings
poverty.
and all of that has a massive effect.
Yeah.
Hence why we only had 15-20%.
Right. Okay.
But now it's shot up to 60% because we've tapped into things like Vodafone, who are offering SIM data cards.
Dongles.
Dongles. The government then gave us lots of, we had about 60 kind of laptops, Chromebooks. So we were able to use that as well. We've topped up on our technological devices. So all of these things means that we're so much more equipped to deal with home learning.
Yeah.
We've created a virtual school amongst our foundation, whereby if someone's off isolating, they just tap into the virtual school and then they have school online. So schools now are further advanced than what they were
the first time.
The first time. It struggles a bit when you go lower down and you've got children in year one, like 5 or 6, that can't access it. But at that age, they're only doing basic addition and subtraction, so it's not that they're not going to fall too far behind. But yeah, I would say to parents, don't be too disheartened if you can't do it, because schools are being paid to teach your children. Although you have to take the ownership of their learning, you don't have to be the priority to do their learning, and allow the schools to do that.
And I was quite disappointed first lockdown because my son's school didn't do anything for the, we locked down in March, and for 3 months they didn't do anything, which I thought was so disappointing. But if you're having issues and you do need a laptop and iPads, as Pelego said, there are organisations and charities that have been funded by the government to offer people laptops and different things so that they can have access to Wi-Fi and to the internet. So it could be a case of just going to your school and saying, look, I found this initiative. Is this something that our school can apply for, so that you can get that support? But thank you ever so much for joining us, Pelego. We appreciate it.
Anytime.